know about how to design an action research based on qualitative design. We're also going to tackle particularly the qualitative research, which will help you to carry out using qualitative design. We will focus on understanding what qualitative research is. We will also talk about the techniques, gathering and collecting the data on qualitative research. But before that, let us know about the objectives for today's webinar. At the end of the session, teachers should be able to, or you, as a participant of this webinar, 1. Describe what qualitative research method is. Second, identify situations when qualitative research method is appropriate for action research. And third, determine techniques in obtaining data for qualitative action research. But before that one, we will have the discussion proper. Let us have a pre-discussion activity by observing the following instruction. First, according to your area of specialization or subject that you are going to teach now in the school year 2020-2021, take a look to the different questions given later on. Second, try to answer these questions in any piece of paper. Here are the following sample research questions. 1. How do experimental and control groups compare in terms of blank scores after intervention blank is implemented? Second, is there a difference between scores in blank obtained before and after intervention blank is implemented? Third, how do blank and blank interact in the classroom when intervention blank is used? Fourth, what are the effects of intervention blank on blank after the intervention given? Okay, each one of you will give or answer these sample questions given. So I will give you 5 minutes on answering that questions. Thank you for your response. I appreciate your participation in this sample action research question. Another instruction, post the two meta cards with the words qualitative and quantitative in each the category belongs on your answer sheet. So you can use either, for the qualitative, you can use square with the color blue of qualitative, either that category is qualitative, and on the other hand, you can use also circle red as quantitative on that particular category of your answer. Okay? Qualitative and quantitative action research method is different in several ways, as we all know that one. From that activity, from that sample questions, I have here suggested following category. So we have the student performance, student attitudes, student behavior, classroom instruction, and classroom management. So in this kind of activity, we could say that action research topics should be properly classified as either quantitative or qualitative. Based on our activity, questions A and B are both quantitative action research questions. Both require numerical data, meaning to say, in order to know the answer, in order to have the proper result of the data, so we are going to use numbers, we're going to compute the data. However, in contrast, questions C and D are both qualitative action research questions. Why? Because both require descriptions or narrative as data. So meaning to say, the action research questions, how do blank and blank interact in the classroom with intervention blank issues, and what are the effects of intervention blank on blank, can be carried out through qualitative research design. So, meaning, action research topics should be properly classified as quantitative or qualitative. Okay, so any questions so far with regards to the answer or to the sample analysis of the pre-activity sample questions? So if there is none, let us proceed with our main discussion, which is understanding qualitative action research. Who among of you know about qualitative action research? So qualitative action research is characterized by its purpose, which is to understand some aspects of students' experience or experiences after an intervention or treatment is applied to address a classroom problem or issue. And then data collection method that involves in this kind of action research, which is qualitative, is involved interviews, observations, and documents method. This can be either generate words or provide verbal informations rather than numbers. That is according to Patton and Cochrane in 2002. So, qualitative action research is applied when it is applied when the interest is to gain knowledge about underlying sentiments, opinions, and motivations following the introduction or implementation of an intervention or treatment. Another, qualitative data enhance the usefulness of the intervention or treatment in its succeeding applications because this clarifies some of the possible reactions or responses of the recipients to the intervention or to the treatment. Another also, qualitative action research also gives a more in-depth and detailed description of the situation in which the intervention was successfully or unsuccessfully applied in order to duplicate the success factor or remedy reasons for failure. Qualitative action research also is useful if you want to initially try out an intervention or treatment, such as a new interaction or instructional design or learning material to address a certain learning problem prior to formally using it for the entire class. So let us now have the comparison between the qualitative and quantitative action research method. So what is the difference between the two, aside from numbers, aside from words description? So for the qualitative action research, focuses on how students look or feel about their experiences with the intervention or treatment as implemented in the classroom, while quantitative action research focuses on quantitative or numerical assessment of the effect of the intervention of the treatment as implemented in the classroom. Another, qualitative action research describes in detail the classroom phenomenon before, during, and after intervention or treatment by portraying the real-world classroom context. On the other hand, quantitative action research summarizes the classroom phenomenon before and after intervention or treatment by precisely stating differences in scores or grades. So very obvious. In this situation, quantitative speaks more on numbers, while qualitative speaks more on feelings or emotions. Another also, in quantitative, there is no scores or treatment, but in the qualitative action research, it involves during the intervention or treatment in the classroom setting. Another difference between qualitative action research and quantitative action research is that in qualitative action research studies effect of intervention or treatment using the student's narrative accounts as a data, while in the quantitative action research, it examines the effect of intervention or treatment using tests, rating scales, or numerical instrument. So an example of numerical instrument, as we all know, are after the test given, aside from the scores, is the item analysis, and then we have also the MPS, or the mean percentage score. Another also difference between the two research designs is that qualitative action research uses thematic analysis of narrative reports of experience, while quantitative action research uses statistical techniques that allow action researchers to talk about how likely it is that the effect of the intervention or treatment applied is true for a given population in an objective or measurable way. Meaning to say, it involves statistical tools like, for example, the central tendency. Then we have also the inferential statistics like t-test, chi-square, and so the ANOVA or the ANCOVA. Last but not the least, the difference between qualitative action research to the quantitative action research is that qualitative employs the systematic action research processes with more flexibility such that the procedures are emergent. Why? Because the method of qualitative action research, you can adjust that one. It is a flexible way of adjusting the procedures. Okay, another also is that the responses of the questions are free-flowing discussion. When you say free-flowing discussion, they can make use of the vernacular when they are going to answer the questions. Okay. On the other hand, quantitative action research, it adheres to the prescribed procedure of the specific experimental design selected. So meaning to say, in the quantitative action research, especially in the procedure, in the data gathering, we cannot interpret, we could not discuss the data unless we could tally. After tallying the data, we are going to compute the data. And after that one, we can now interpret and discuss the data. That is under the quantitative action research. So that's all for the difference between qualitative and quantitative action research. Now, let's come to the types of qualitative action research design. So we have actually, there are 4 types of qualitative action research design. The first one is more complicated in compared to the first 3 types of qualitative. That is why I'm going to discuss with you the easiest or the simple types of qualitative action research design. So we have the case study, the ethnography, the phenomenological study. So what do you mean by case study? Case study involves a deep understanding of one individual or one class through multiple types of data sources. Case studies can be explanatory, exploratory, or descriptive of an individual student or an entire class after an intervention has been applied. Example, we have an example of the cases that we are going to treat that one inside of the classroom. For example of a case is that disruptive or violent behavior. So we have the suggested action to be taken by a teacher. Behavioral modification intervention to help him or her manage disruptive. Another case also, frequently absent from the class. So what is the reason behind why the student or the pupils frequently absent from the class? So we have the suggested action to be taken, teacher monitoring system applied to an addressed student. Meaning to say, we have to monitor from time to time the attendance of the student. Another also is relational and personal difficulties. So suggested action is that entire class undergoing brief daily homeroom sessions with their advisor to discuss learning. So there will be a sort of tutorial or a sort of conversation during the vacant time of the teacher. Maybe after the class in the afternoon or during recess time if there is a time yet. So case study might also be used during to assess the situation stage of action research framework. Why? Prior to the implementation of the intervention or treatment, maybe you might to examine the specific difficulties of addressed student. Okay, the second type of qualitative action research design is a ethnographic study. So what do you mean by ethnographic study? So from the word ethno. So ethno, it is a kind of ethnicity. What is the ethnicity of the pupils or the student? Maybe he's belong to ethnogroups of Muslim community, like for example, Maranao, Maguindanao, Batchao, Yakan, and so on and so forth. And then another for the Christian culture. So when you say ethnographic study, it's probably the most familiar and applicable type of qualitative study to many action researchers. Why? Because the researcher or the action researcher here he's going to immerse himself or herself in the target participants' environment to understand their goals and culture, as well as the challenges that the student or the pupils might encounter, and for him or her to motivate for life. So meaning, ethnographic study may, however, lead one to identify a problem or issue that may be addressed by intervention or treatment implemented throughout the action research period. Example of the scenario under the ethnographic or ethnological study. So we have the scenario. First, being accessible to your students after school or tutorial might help improve their scores in math. Then action, teacher's action. You may request permission to be allowed to spend 2 hours after school day, maybe from 5 or 7 o'clock to tutor students. Another also action taken, you are going to get to know the life of the students and the kind of activities that take much of their time and deter them from focusing on their doing of their homework or assignment. Another scenario, understanding the experiences of 4 P's recipients. Students, teachers' action, schedule, the frequency, and duration of home visitation. The third types of qualitative action research study is phenomenological study. When we say phenomenological study, it examines student experiences called live experiences through their own description. The goal of knowing the life experiences of the students or the participants is to describe the meaning that experiences hold for each individual participant. In the 2 previous types of qualitative phenomenological study, this may also be used prior knowledge in identifying the action research topic and development. Assessing the situation for stage 1 of the action research framework. Example, you may describe how families of balik aral students adjust to a situation. A phenomenological study can be designed for that purpose. Okay, so we have example of phenomenological study. Example of problem or phenomena. Absentee parents. So, action to be taken is that care of grandparents or other relatives by their own parents as a representative during PTA meeting or whatever, or during classroom convocation. Another also phenomena is that difficulty submitting requirements. Action that will be taken for a teacher in this kind of phenomena or problem, adapt a classmate intervention for 1 quarter. You examine its effectiveness by interviewing the participants, and then the participants may be both adapted pupil and the adapting pupil with his or her family. Narrate the activities that they engage in and share their feelings and views about them. So from time to time, they are going to have a journal about their experiences between the adapted pupil and the adapting pupil. Okay. Any question with regards to the types of qualitative action research? Now, let's come to the sampling method of qualitative action research. So it's very simple in the qualitative action research. Why? Because it is usually uses purposive and accessible sampling method. Example of purposive, it is a snowball or referral sampling. Occasionally, it is through interviews. So what happens is the first respondent refers the action researcher to another respondent, and then who then also leads the investigator to the next participant, and so on. So meaning to say, the first case or the first participant responses is very important because that leads the investigator to the next participant, so on and so forth. Okay. Another sampling method under qualitative is quota sampling procedure. When we see quota sampling procedure, suppose that you have 50 students. Out of the 50 students, you have 30 are female and 20 are male. So for a sample of 10, 6 have to be girls and the rest are boys. So 6 girls and 4 boys in a total sample of 10. So action research does not have an entire list of participants. He or she may know only one or a few students who can provide the data needed. The rest of the respondents are identified by the first few participants. Now let's come to the data collection method. So methods of data collection under the qualitative action research are the following. First, individual interviews. Next, focus groups or focus group discussions. Third, participants' observations. Fourth, documents or materials. So, meaning to say, in this kind of method of data collection, there will be a scanning of documents. Another also, we have open-ended questionnaires. When you see open-ended questionnaires, one questions must have a follow-up question. So, it might be a probing questions. Okay. What are the two ethical issues that should be considered in any qualitative action research project? First, the consent of the participants and those who are responsible for them. So if it is a student, of course, it is a protocol that we are going to ask a proposal that you are going to write an action research to your principal. Another also, a letter of permission from the advisor if you are a subject teacher on that particular section or grade level. Another ethical issues that could be considered in doing qualitative research project is the confidentiality of information obtained from them. Meaning to say, whatever the information, either if it's not a secret or a secret one, it should be kept along between you as a researcher and the participant only. So, no need to share with that one in your co-teachers. Okay, now, any questions so far with regards to the ethical issues of making or doing qualitative action research? Okay, if there is none, then let's come to the application of this discussion of designing qualitative action research. So you have a task. From the following list of topics, each one of you will choose only one and write one qualitative action research question. So here are the following topics. 1. Senior high students' reaction to the use of online class amidst of the pandemic time. Another, experiences of students engaged in group study organized to help them understand the concepts in a particular subject. Third topic, opinions of elementary pupils on weekly career guidance sessions. And fourth, evaluating online learning modules through action research. So you have heard the format on how to answer the task. So we have 4 columns in a table. In the first column, you are going to write the problem or the topic that had been given. Another, in the second, you are going to write the research question. And in the third column, participants, or you are going to select the sample size of your participants. And in the fourth column, the data collection method. Either if it is an interview, either if it is a data scanning or a document scanning, or either it is an open-ended questions. Thank you for your participation. Hope that you learned enough about qualitative research design to be able for you to plan on what action and research design that you may be doing so in later on of your teaching for this school year. So before I leave to this hall, I have something to you to share. Quote from a renowned physicist and genius, no other than Albert Einstein. According to him, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. Albert Einstein. Thank you.